I want to welcome you back to Thrive in the Word. We are studying through the book of 1 John, and today we are in the second chapter, verse number 16. Now, in our prior video, we talked to you about the love of the world, and we mentioned that the word for world here is the Greek word cosmos, and it doesn't mean the people of the world, it means the systems of the world. And John continues on in his instruction, and he says this now in verse number 16, and I'm reading out of the New Living Translation, and it says, "For the world offers only a craving for physical pleasure, a craving for everything we see, and the pride of our achievements and possessions. These are not from the Father, but are from this world." Now, John talks in verse number 15 about the things that are in the world. And now he lists what those things are. The first thing that he lists here that the world gives to us, that the world produces, is this craving for physical pleasure. Now, in the New American Standard Version, it talks about the lust of the flesh. I think also that's in the King James, New King James. What does it mean? The lust of the flesh, or the cravings for everything physical. Well, how many of you realize that all of you have cravings? You know, if you go without food, how many of you have ever tried to fast for 3 or 4 days? And all you get hungry. You know, I think the greatest understatement of the Bible is found where it talks about Jesus had fasted for 40 days and he was hungry. There's cravings that we have naturally, cravings for water, cravings for sleep, cravings for food. And that's not what John is writing about here. He is actually talking about a craving or a lust or a desire that is out of control. John is not talking about the natural cravings of a person's life. He's talking about things that are out of control. How many of you know that you can be out of control in many different areas? You can be out of control in how much sleep you get. You can be out of control in how much water that you drink or how much water that you do not drink. You can be out of control in how much food you eat. You can be out of control with sexual desires. You see, all of those things are desires. But when those desires begin to control you, you know what? Then the love of the Father is no longer controlling your life. You are serving another master. Do you understand? And so John tells us, he says, these physical things, this craving, this out of control craving, this lust for physical things is something that the world is offering to you. And when you love the world, when you love the systems of the world, you know what happens? Because you love that system, you become bound to these cravings, to these lusts. I really don't like the word cravings here. I would prefer the word lust, because the word lust tells us that it's something that's out of control. You see, we need to understand that you can't love the world and love the Father at the same time. Why? Because the things that the world produces in us is not things that love the Father. It's things that love us. And so he talks here about these cravings or these lusts of the flesh. And then the next thing that John talks about in verse number 16, and again in the NLT, it's a craving for everything we see. In the New American Standard, and also I believe in the King James, it says the lust of the eyes. Now you say, well, what's the difference between the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes? Well, how many of you realize that there's things you can see that you don't have? Let me list a couple of them. How about authority? You know, when I drive down the road and I see a police officer, I pull over into the farthest lane to get away from him. But if that police officer were to come out and say halt or say stop, you know what I would do? I would stop. Why? Because he has the power to flip my car over? No. Because I see in him authority. And you see, a lust for the things that we see is not always a physical desire out of control. There are things that we see, such as popularity. There's things that we see that are desires that people have just so that people will see them and give them what they desire. I was watching a video years and years ago of a man who was he was the richest man in the world at that time. And they said, why don't you just retire? And you know what he said? He said, because I want more. I want more. And what was his problem? His problem was he was loving the world. His problem was he was loving all the fame and all the things that his wealth had bought him. He was out of control. Now, the next thing that John talks about, and it says, and the pride in our achievements and possessions. The New American Standard says the boastful pride of life. You see, people do things because of pride. And when a person is proud of all the things that they've accomplished, when the person is proud of all the awards and all the things that they've accomplished, you know what? They begin to serve those things. They begin to give of themselves over to those things. And so John is telling us that you can't love the Father and have an out-of-control desire for physical things, an out-of-control desire for things you see, and an out-of-control desire for pride and being proud of all that you've accomplished. And then at the end of the verse, he says, you do not have the love. At the end of the verse, he says this, these are not from the Father, but are from the world. What does John say? He's saying these things, this desire that's out of control for physical things, desire that's out of control for the things that you can see, and pride, these things are not from the Father. These things come and are produced in the world. And how are they produced in the world? They are produced in the world when you or anyone else loves the world instead of loving the Father. I hope this has blessed you. Our prayer for you is that God will bless you abundantly.